My name's Jason Sulliman. I teach low brass here. I do a little bit of work with the marching band here. My background before I came here was in the drum corps and blast community, basically. I've been the music manager and conductor for the past 3 tours with that company, but I've been a performer on and off since 1999 when they opened in London. And basically what I've done over the past 15 years is I've either been working on some kind of degree or I've been doing some kind of blast tour, so I've been kind of going back and forth. My background is primarily in music, but I'm also finishing a master's in kinesiology at Indiana University. So one of my research interests has been to kind of bridge the gap between this world of performing artists that don't necessarily have time or resources to get the background in health, injury prevention, wellness, that kind of stuff. So I've been trying to meet those two groups together. And you mentioned you're an exercise science major. Anyone else studying on that side of the fence, science, physical therapy, anything like that? Okay, so today we're going to get into a little bit of that. And I guess my motivation particularly was, I marched drum corps in the mid-90s where it was a different thing. It wasn't what it is now. What you do is amazing out there, but the resources that were available to us at the time was far more limiting. We did not have trainers that were available more frequently than they are now with the top drum corps. We really just didn't know anything. And we were kind of left up to our own to self-monitor our own health. And unfortunately what that meant is that most people were lucky enough to stay healthy for the summer and do their thing. And then there were some people that unfortunately developed injuries and just had to go home early. And that happened. A lot of corps would have people that would leave early just due to some kind of injury that prevented them from continuing their job. And then holes would need to be filled and everybody's scrambling. So I'm sure that some of you have probably experienced that in some of the groups that you've been in already. So just to talk briefly about ways that you in particular can kind of stay healthy. On the one side of the coin, there's the aspect of keeping yourself healthy enough to survive this summer, because it's rigorous. What we do is hard. The body is not built for it naturally, so we're stressing it in many ways. But the other side of the coin, I think, is that we're talking about not only survival, but how to maintain optimal health so that you can thrive and be the best performer possible. A healthier performer is going to be firing on all cylinders and has a better chance of really achieving their greatest level of potential on a regular basis. And so some of this information, though you might not feel injured, though you might not feel as much pain per se, some of this stuff will help you kind of maintain that higher level of physical ability to perform at your best. So hopefully you find it helpful. But to get started, so I'll just talk really briefly about what's in the handout. And I think my battery died. So Angelo, you're our only hope today. I think. I don't know. We'll find out. All right, so some basic information just about stretching and about body. For muscles, I'll just give a basic overview of muscles. So we have something like, 600 and something muscles in the body. We don't need to know the names of all of them, but there's a couple things we do need to know about muscles. Number one, muscles only pull. There is no such thing as pushing. Muscles do not push anything. The body is basically a system of complex levers, and muscles pull. They always pull. They always contract and pull, which means the only way that they move is by shortening their length. So if you want to raise your arm, there are certain muscles in your body that are shortening and pulling the arm up. There's no pushing that's happening of any kind, anywhere in the body. We have muscles that work in protagonist, antagonist pairs. So for example, a protagonist. So who can name a protagonist? Maybe from a movie or something. A hero. Harry Potter. Okay, so if Harry Potter's the protagonist, who's the antagonist? Okay, so we've got Harry Potter, let's say, as our biceps. And when our biceps shorten, our arm bends up. And then the antagonist partners would be the triceps. That's Voldemort, right? So Voldemort contracts, pulls the arm back down. So there's a couple things that happen. Number one, there's never any pushing. And actually, as a music educator, I hate the word, push through that phrase. And as a brass player, a lot of people say that. It's kind of a misnomer, but I guess that's a quibble of semantics, so I try to keep that to myself. But when we think about the body in terms of these pulling levers, there's a couple of factors that come into play. First off, if you're going to pull this set of muscles, like if your biceps are going to contract and your arm's going to bend, There's a signal that goes to the brain that shuts off your triceps. Your triceps have to be relaxed in order for that to happen. If they're not, what happens? Your arm, whatever position it's in, will just stay there in some kind of gridlock. Go ahead, stick your arm out, make a fist, and squeeze and flex. I guarantee your biceps are activated and your triceps are activated. And they're activated at an equal level of tension so that your arm doesn't move. If your biceps are winning the tug of war, your arm goes this way. If your triceps are winning the tug of war, your arm goes this way. Now, a couple of things that we can think about in terms of movement. For example, and I love the analogy, or I love what Bruce Lee was about. Do you know who Bruce Lee is? Yeah, Kung Fu and all that stuff. I don't know much about Kung Fu, and I don't really care much for violence, but the way that he learned to move his body, I thought was genius, and he pretty much was self-taught in this respect. When Bruce Lee would, throw a punch, one of the things that he discovered was that if he was able to maintain the most relaxed state possible, all the way through the motion, as relaxed as possible, and then right at the end is when he would make the fist. Right before impact is when the fist would come and then pow. And he had this amazing ability to have what was called a 1-inch punch. So if somebody was standing 1 inch away from him, he could take his arm and knock him over. And part of the way that he developed that was just maintaining a maximum amount of relaxation, even through the force production to move forward. And then right at the end was when the tension hit. Usually as performers, especially as novice performers, as adolescent performers, and as we're kind of climbing the ladder through what we do in our craft, we tend to try really hard. And when we often look at effort as more effort, is trying more hard. So we tend to over-engage the muscles in our body. Sometimes when we're chopping out, we're doing our scales, and it gets really hard, we tend to over-tense the muscles that are in our body. Remember, that's just creating gridlock. If your biceps and your triceps are activated, your arm is being counterproductive. There's wasted energy, but also you could be doing some damage in the long term. So the first section on the handout talks about isometric contraction. Isometric contraction is this concept of gridlock. For example, if the biceps and the triceps are both flexing at the same time or both trying to pull in opposite directions, there's no change to the length of muscles. The biceps are the same length, triceps the same length. Nothing is changing length. All right? And that's known as static muscle contraction. It's static because nothing's moving. Dynamic would be when there's movement, when there's change to the length of the muscles. All right? Static muscle contraction is wasted energy. It's less efficient. It's less productive, especially for what you want to do. And there's so many little muscles, especially in the arms, that you're going to be using on a constant basis. If you're over-engaging the muscles, you're using extra energy. And physics tells us that you're actually going to be developing less resonance drawn from the instrument. Resonance actually comes all the way through and radiates up your body, unless you're tensing everything, and then you don't get that vibrating mechanism to resonate along with your playing. And so that can really affect your tone. I'm sure you've worked on that at some point along the way. I know for me it's a big deal. So on the one hand, talking about that high-level performance, if we're over-tense and if we're overusing and overworking, we're not going to get the greatest sound, we're not going to get the greatest level of efficiency with what we're doing. But on a more severe scale, we could be developing things that are eventually going to injure us. All right? So if you have prolonged static muscle use, prolonged isometric contraction, there's a signal that kind of goes to the brain and says, hey, I'm using these muscles, but they're not changing length. And the brain says, well, that's a problem. So let's just shut down some of these muscle fibers. Let's just cut them off. All right? We're just sending wasted energy to those muscle fibers. We're going to shut them down. And when the brain says, all right, let's shut those down, well, think about what happens. Let's say all 5 fingers need to be involved in some kind of motion, right? If all of a sudden I shut down my thumb, these 4 fingers are going to have to work harder now to do the same level of work, right? You ever done group work in school? You ever have one person who's just not pulling their weight? What happens? Everyone else has to do the work, and it just kind of annoys everybody, right? Billy just won't get his act together. The body works the same way. Muscles work the same way. So there are times where you have muscles that are not equipped to do the job, that have to be recruited to do that extra work. That's when injury comes. That's when pain, to the point of being debilitating, comes. So there's a couple things I wanted to show you. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to purchase one for you, but I would make a recommendation on getting one of these. This is a wobble board. Has anyone ever seen a wobble board before? So I'm sure you have, yeah. What context have you seen this in? What is this used for? Balance. But who primarily uses this? Athletes and? Patients in rehab. Yep, those are the two most common populations that are going to use this. So for example, let's say you sprain your ankle and then you go to rehab for a while, and then over time they'll have you do exercises where you stand on the wobble board and you might try to find your balance, right? Or you'll stand on 2 feet and you try to find your balance. And over time what you're doing is, one of the things you're doing is you're strengthening the little muscles kind of all over the area. So eventually you develop a way to kind of regain the balance. And when things are strong and things are working properly, you can maintain balance. The reason why I bring it up for y'all, I use the word y'all here, and I've been trying to adopt it and embrace it, so I'll say it at least 4 times just to develop a level of comfort with it. I love it. There's no second person plural for you, in the North. We just say you, and then everyone's confused. So, okay, so this is a laser pointer. Does it work? Darn, it doesn't work. Oh, wait, no, wait. Oh, yeah, there it is. You see that? See that dot? Okay, great. So I'm pulling research from sharpshooters. All right, some of the world's greatest, shooters. There's a couple of events. In Winter Olympics, you have the biathlon, which is you ski and then you shoot things and then you do more skiing, right? Well, one of the things about highly trained sharpshooters is that they have to essentially point at a target and maintain such a steadiness so that there's a consistency to their shot. All right. Can I have a volunteer? You're in the front. So what I want you to do is I want you to take, it's the red button in the middle. That one? Yeah. All right, you see this bolt here?
Yes.
I want you to aim it right at that bolt. Now what's your name?
Jacob.
Jacob. All right, so now Jacob, I mean just right at the bolt. It's moving, you see how it's moving around? Try it again. You see how it's dancing around? Can you just keep it right on that bolt? What do you hear Jacob doing? He's tensing up. The natural human tendency is to try harder. Our highly developed brains have somehow learned this habit of, we'll just add more effort, and that'll get the job done. But actually, highly trained sharpshooters have developed a habit of lightening up and letting go of everything. The body works in a very fluid way. We're kind of full of fluid. We're basically 70% water, just like the Earth. And when the muscles and the joints are free to have all these tiny little micro adjustments, you can actually develop a greater sense of consistency. So now what I want you to do is just think about relaxing as much as possible. Minimal effort toward holding the laser. Now, it's not going to be perfect, but go for it. So as you relax, think about the fluidity of the arms. Now, every time we take a breath, we actually change our center of gravity. There's fluids flowing, like blood and whatever, all through our body, neurotransmitters. That changes all sorts of little micro balances of everything. Now, over time, it's still pretty hard, right? So over time, what you would find, so the wobble board works the same way. Thank you. The wobble board works the same way. If you try to stand on a wobble board, and you tense everything in order to try to maintain balance, what's going to happen? You're not going to be able to do it. The body works in a way where you have to try to maintain a level of fluidity. So you have to learn to let go of everything, right? The core that's engaged to keep our body standing upright. We actually over-engage a lot of things in our midsection. As a brass player, I find that to be of huge value. But think about what you do. What is your basic posture during performance? Standing up. It's this posture right here. So even in your standing posture, you might be over-engaging in a way. Now, that's not going to injure you and send you home, but it's going to affect your sound and it's going to affect your ability to maintain the highest level of achievement, both in the sound you're creating on the instrument and the way that you're able to mentally stay focused within your show. So if you can get your hands on a wobble board, one of the things that you can do is you just learn how to wobble. And the way you learn how to wobble is you just think about getting nice and relaxed, and you allow the body to move. Once the body can move, then all of a sudden you can find balance. And it's an amazing thing. So for me, when I'm playing my instrument, I want to make sure that I just have not only just great posture in terms of just being nice and upright, elongated spine, you've heard all those terms before, but I want to do it with the least amount of effort possible. So one of the things that I found is the $20 investment in getting a wobble board is the easiest way. You get on a wobble board, you wobble around. I use this so much that when I go places, I drilled a hole in it so I can carabiner it to my bag and take it with me. I live with this thing. I mean, it's not like it doesn't come to bed with me and I don't cook for breakfast, but I use it every day. I spend more time playing a trombone standing on a wall board than I do not. It's that important. It's been that life-changing for me as a performer. But every day I make sure I spend a little time to take a couple of deep breaths. And then when I get off the wall board, everything's just balanced, centered. Very easy for me to do my job. All right, so I'll let you all you'll get a chance to try that. But going a little further into what we're going to do, what I'd like to do is just, first off, just that concept of efficiency, that concept of relaxation, that concept of balance, highly, highly important for what we're going to do. But what I'd like to do now is I'd like to actually show you some stretches, some massage work, etc., that can help kind of keep you healthy for the course of the summer. So go ahead and put the handout away. You can read the rest of it at your leisure. You all know how to read, and I'm sure that you can handle it. And then I'd like you to actually come up on stage. All right, everyone take a tennis ball or it's a dollar store ball. I don't know what they're called. Racquetball. The dollar ball. Do I have enough?
We're a big pit.
Yeah, your big pit. Okay, for those of you that have one, what I'll do is I'll run them out until I get some more. But for those of you that have one, here, I'll show you real quick. Find a spot near the wall. Take the tennis ball and throw it against the wall. Just start working your back right? Nice little back massage. Start working the shoulders a little bit. If you get creative or if you get skilled, you can go around to the side of the shoulders, roll them around, even go to the front, get the front of the shoulders. Just start working on loosening up the muscles that are kind of all over the back. If you want to get really daring, you can go down, towards the middle of the back, the rectus spinae. If you want to get really great, you can get the hamstrings and the glutes. Start with the wall, and I'll be back for who needs. How many more do we need? Like 5? 5 or 6? 6. All right, 6. I'll be right back.
Until you drop it yourself. I was thinking of Amelia. We were both like that face. That was so nice. I just like watching his face. She's like, guys, this is my dream.
Oh, shoot.
Jensen just wants to do this all
Can't even see the ball.
No,
It's just like
not this.
sitting on it. Just like,
Somebody walks in.
Literally all of my school
No, the ball
work
again.
have to like kind of apply to this stuff.
All right, who's left?
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bet. So find a spot. Now, a couple of things. This ball, I've actually used it so much. This is the base. Who's got the baseball from the dollar store?
Me.
This used to be that, but I've used it that much. It just slowly, scrapes right from the wall. So, if you have a racquetball, if you have one of the dollar store squeezy balls. Sorry. So every type of ball is going to have the fancy physics term is called the coefficient of elastic restitution. You do not need to know that, but basically, that one doesn't bounce very much. See how that would bounce a little more? So this one's a little springier, right? Every ball has a different, level of spring likeness or density to it, which means that if you were to use it on your back or your shoulders or whatever, you're going to feel it in different ways. You're going to feel it in different places. All right. So if you have a racquetball, at some point switch up with someone that has a tennis ball so you can feel the difference. If you have a dollar store ball, switch up with someone who has a tennis ball. At some point you can feel the difference. Yeah, it's a different thing, right? It's totally a different thing. So, obviously, one of the things that we want to do, your body can just develop knots. You all have knots to some extent. But over time, if we don't work out the knots that are in our muscles that we use, and they get inflamed, and the fascia starts getting all the technical term. Over time, you can actually develop what's known as permanent knots, if you will. In fact, who has a racquetball? Here. This one might work. Here. You do what? Listen. You ready? Let's That's not the ball. That's mid-90s baritone drum corps. You hear that? Yeah, those are the knots that are just in my back. And since I didn't know, I didn't take care of myself, and I'm gonna have them for the rest of my life now. Like, I just have permanent scar tissue on my back. Now, I can function, no one will know, I don't have a handicap placard on my car, like, I'm fine. But, if I knew then what I know now, I would have taken better, sorry, that was totally a bad throw. I would have taken better care of myself, and that's my point, all right? And so everything that you do, let's face it, you use your arms, you use your shoulders, you use your back, you have to stand. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our body in a way, not just to survive, but to thrive with what we want to do. If we're going to be high-level people, we need to have high-level bodies, and that means we need to take care of them, like athletes. And I know drum corps has really made a move, sound sport and all these other concepts, and they're investing more, and it has become officially a bigger deal, and I think that's great. But you as an individual need to make it the biggest deal for yourself. Because who knows your body better than you? Nobody. You have to make sure that you're very aware of how you feel, what you're using, what you're taxing, and you've got to make sure you're taking care of yourself in your downtime. Which, let's face it, is very minimal when you get to it, right? It's little downtime, so you have to be very efficient with that. So, I'm judging from your faces, it looks like you might want to just stay in this place maybe another minute or two. So, yeah, feel free. A couple of other things I'm throwing in the bag for y'all. This is a foam roller. Many of you have probably seen these. Basically, this works the same way as what the ball is doing right now, but obviously it's cylindrical, so it only goes in one plane, and it's for larger muscles. For example, if you wanted to get, let's say, the side of the hips, right? You could roll out things like that. If you needed to get, let's say, some quad pain, you can roll out things like that. Many of your calves, you can roll out things like that. So you can basically use it just like what you're doing right now, but it's a way to just kind of get more business done. So you'll have this with you. This is fun. Just let you guys, I'll just take off, go get a cup of coffee, come back. You'll be like, yeah, what's the name? It is close. Some are hours. What a drag. Actually, I'm not a coffee drinker. Oh, here, you know what? I'll give you a couple of these. I got these at the dollar store years ago, but they've hardened over time. So actually, they're not quite as hard as a wooden ball, but they'll do the job. Who is feeling some junk? All right. So I want you to take this ball. And I want you to do the same exact thing, but obviously as a smaller ball, it's going to be a little more invasive. It's going to be a little more intense if you use it the same way, but you're basically just going to do the same thing. Can you hear that? Yeah, it sounds like a bag of marbles in a pool. Yeah. But, anyone else? So if I were you, how much rehearsal do you do in a day?
12 hours of minutes.
About 12 hours? So about 3 blocks of 4, roughly, right? So with my students, what I tell them is if they're practicing 2 hours or less, they don't need to do a whole lot. They should do a little bit. But if they're going to practice 4 hours, then they have to do a little bit of rehab work. If they're going to practice 8 hours, they got to do a lot of rehab work. If you're practicing 12 hours, really, this should be almost a constant thought for you when you're not rehearsing. I'm not saying you need to obsess about finding a wall and making sure that, but it always has to be on your mind, all right? Moments during dinner, moments during lunch, moments during water breaks. Most pits, I remember where Sandy used to tell me that if they would run, and if the pit got to the shade first, they could rehearse in the shade. But if the caption head got to the shade first, they'd have to rehearse in the sun. That was like a game that they played. But so sometimes they would get to the shade, like next to a building, and that'd be a perfect time to be like, okay, work out my back, and then I'm going to get to my business. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, most of you have a ball that should go in this bag, but a couple of you, I guess, have a ball that should go in that crate, as long as we're close. We'll go ahead and we'll collect, because don't worry, the next thing's going to be lovely for you as well. Sure. Here, I'm going to take one of these. Yep. Yeah, it's amazing how just a couple of minutes, it's like you go to your Zen place all of a sudden. And then so again, a lot of different sizes here. So we'll actually, you know what? You got a little here too. These. You get all the way around? Okay, so we all have something about the size of the golf ball. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit of forearm work. Oh. So what you can do, now, and I'm sure you all know this, but when you use your fingers, the actuators that control those fingers are actually down here in the forearm area. So there are times where you're going to feel wrist pain, but it can be caused due to inflammation down here and overwork down here. So go ahead, take your arm and just put it against your leg. I think you know what to do at this point. Start working it around. Sorry, there's a learning curve. You'll be fine.
Should your hand be relaxed?
Yeah, and actually, if it's relaxed, you'll notice that if you press in the right places, it moves your fingers for you. Yeah. It's like a little marionette puppet. Cool. Yeah, the last two fingers tend to run on the same tendon, so if you push over here, you'll actually get like both fingers to kind of move. It's kind of freaky. But it's a nice way to just kind of get in there, break things up a little bit of massage. The other thing you can do, obviously, now everyone's going to feel it in different places, and everyone's going to need, to spend some time in different spots. You can actually pretty much get all the way up to the wrist, as long as you're not pushing too hard into the wrist. We won't push too hard right into the wrist. But then you can also do this if you turn your palm over, and now you're talking about more of the top part of the forearm. That is also another place that has been known to need a little love. Right, a lot of this, right? Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I mentioned this with the battery. There's one particular muscle. I believe it's called the brachioradialis muscle, and it runs up here. There's a major nerve that runs down our arm, and if the brachioradialis muscle, basically like this one, and you use that all the time, that muscle. If that muscle gets inflamed, it's common, not always, but common that a misdiagnosis of carpal tunnel syndrome can come your way because the symptoms are similar to carpal tunnel, which we all know is not a great thing if you want to, play in the pit or do anything with your hands. And so, if you spend a little time massaging that out, breaking that out. All right, so now you don't have to stop, but I'm going to pass these around as well. Yep, make sure you get both arms. Okay, so you can send it back. Yeah. The smaller one's are also great for like fingers and hands, so we're gonna get Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. It's like that game, Hungry Hippo.
We're all the hippos.
It's such a fun game. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. We all have a little one? We all have a little one?
Yes.
Okay. So what you can do now, you can take the little one and actually you can put it in your palms like this, and you can start working the little muscles in the hands. And up here, it's primarily more ligament and tendon based, but not a bad way to spend the time. And you can get really, really good at rolling it around and getting all sorts of different spots. I'm assuming you're holding more than one mallet at the same time at various times in the show, and so there's various scooping motions and claw-like hand motions that you have to use. So these muscles are definitely going to need a little bit of love, every so often.
Back to the hand too.
Especially if you're over tensing in order to do the thing you need to do, that can really cause some issues. So basically what I did was the other day, I went to the Hobby Lobby, is usually where you get the wooden craft balls, and then I went to the dollar store and got a couple of the bouncy balls, and then I went to Target and got some of the racquetballs and tennis balls. And I put together a bag. So you'll have it on tour. So you'll have it the whole time in move-ins, you'll have it on the bus with you, you'll have it at rehearsals. And so, yeah, hey, we're here to help set you up for as much success as possible. You know, now the truth is, you're all young and spry. Your bodies have much more elasticity than mine does at this point. You know, I'm closer to 40 than I am to 20. So my body doesn't bounce back like yours will. That is a blessing and a curse, because you might have a day of rehearsals where you really beat yourself up, and then you go to bed and you wake up the next day, and other than the whole like constant fatigue and soreness, you don't feel that bad because your body has recuperated a little bit. But that kind of just means that you're going to have a lot of potentially damaging things that are just flying under the radar. I, however, if I overdo it, my body lets me know very clearly and very, very immediately. And so I've learned in these past, 5-6 years that I have to pay very special attention to it, and I have to be very mindful of it. I think it's a blessing and a curse when you're younger, because your body doesn't, the signals aren't as loud for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be very proactive, to stay on top of that. Otherwise you'll be dealing with it later. You pay now or you pay later. I guess that's what we'll say. And actually, and the bag that you have, it's got, there are also balls that are like half this size.
What?
Yeah, it's got really tiny. And so like when you want to get into your fingers, and just get all up in there, you can spend some time doing that as well. All right, so make sure that you take advantage.
Where if you put like a bunch of them in your hands are just like.
I would drop them left and right, but I mean, actually, you know what? Like if you got like a mesh bag, so they kind of stay together, and then just work through it, I bet you that would feel amazing. That'd be great. In fact, here, you want to try it out?
I would love
I made you the laser pointer person, so I might as well give you the.
Kind of hard to know.
It's a large bag, so it's. It's all right. You've got all summer to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to show you a couple of stretches you can do as well. Some will stand for and some will sit for. Since we're sitting, we'll start with the sitting stretches for now. A couple of things that I see frequently in the world of music and other places is when people want to stretch things like their forearms and wrists, they'll do things like this. They'll go up to a wall, they'll stretch this way, they'll go this way, they'll take their hand and go back this way. I'm glad I'm hearing some sounds that indicate that that's not the best way to do it, because it is not the best way to do it. Your wrist has something like 27 joints in it, right? There's all sorts of little bones in here. And when you compress those down by applying pressure in unnatural ways, you can actually be doing just as much damage as you are potentially helping the muscles. You don't want to help the muscles by damaging the joints, right? We want to make sure that we're helpful without that. So there's a thing that you can do instead. The way that I kind of start to stretch these muscles out, first thing, we're going to go after the top muscles from the forearm. So we've massaged them a little bit, so now it's the perfect time to stretch, all right? So go ahead, take an arm, kind of hold it out in front of you, nice relaxed hand, whatever, looks like a mummy pose. And then take the opposite hand, take that thumb, and put it underneath so that it's kind of right in the wrist joint. What we're going to do is we're going to do two things. Number one is we're going to pull the hand down, but number two is we're going to push away from our body with that thumb, lengthening the arm, kind of away from ourselves. Some of you are going to feel a stretch up here, but I bet you most of you don't yet. Don't worry, that's coming. It's possible that you all have pretty good range of motion in your wrists, which has aided you in your abilities to play keyboard instruments very well. So go ahead and relax. So now what we're going to do is, instead of just having the hand completely relaxed, I want you to make a fist. You don't have to squeeze it, but just bring the fingers in and then do the same exact motion. And you're going to feel it in a different way.
Oh.
And if you think about it, because the actuators back here are the ones that pull the fingers this way, if you pull your fingers down this way, you're stretching them a little bit, so then you get more stretch when you go into this position. Does that make sense? So then you hold 2 to 4 seconds, stay nice and relaxed. And remember, you're pushing with your thumb away from your body. You're adding length to this part of the system. Very important. Relax and shake it out. We'll do the other side. So, finger underneath. I imagine many of you will want to just start with the fist. That's fine. We'll just get right to it. And over time, you'll get really, really good at knowing how to stretch your body. For example, if I'm here, let's say this is 0 degrees straight down. If I go to 1 degrees, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4, blah, 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 90 degrees, what you'll find is that slight changes to the way you're doing it. My hand, see how my hand is, I'm changing the angle of my hand. There's all sorts of little tiny micro movement changes that you can make that all of a sudden, ding, that hits the spot. So you'll have to get really, really good at being aware of what you need. The best way to do it. All right. Does that feel okay? Good, good, good. Here, why don't we'll throw the balls back in, and Jake can get them back there. I'll just go around. I'd have you all roll down, but I would probably miss most of them. So you're going to have a bag similar to this with you, so make sure you take advantage. And then as you have turned in, as you have turned in the balls, go ahead, stand up and find a little bit of space on the stage. So just kind of take up the whole stage. You're going to need a little bit of room to move arms, etc. So maybe not in a circle. Somebody can move here. Just a little bit of space to kind of, Okay, so we got the back side, or the top side of the forearms, if you will. I want to kind of get the back side of the forearms now as well. Frankly, you can do this. I don't feel it at all. This does nothing for me. It's just when my body's designed. I'm assuming you're not going to feel a whole lot that way. So here's some things you can do instead. Let's start with the head, neck, and work our way out. So starting with just a couple of neck rolls. This is review. I'm sure you've all done neck rolls before, but one way to do it would be just relax the head down. Gravity is pulling the head down, and that's what's giving length to the back of the neck. And then just take it over to one side, trying to minimize the actual usage. And then hopefully maybe you feel it a little bit in the side. Roll it back down. Go to the other side. Pretty basic stuff. You've done this before. And roll back down the middle. And go over to the side. Good. Then bring your hand up a little bit. Then go right into some shoulder rolls. Shoulders go up. They go back. They go down. Ooh. I get a snap. You need one shoulder at a time. Try bringing all the way to that ear. Then go ahead, we'll go to chicken wings. Just go ahead and bring the hands up. All around.
Sorry.
No, it's all right.
Pops every time.
If I've stretched for a couple minutes, mine will crack every time. In this shirt, it's a little typical. It's a little. And then go, if you have room, full arms. Watch out for your neighbors. Now here, a lot of guards use the term in the toaster, and that refers to the planes that we function on. So this is the sagittal plane. So if you want to stay in this plane as long as possible before you have to kind of splay out due to body constraints, lack of flexibility, walls, things like that. Go ahead, we'll do one more. And then in this position, now what we're going to do is we're going to take our arms and we're going to put them out, palms forward. So some of you might have to turn a little bit, that's okay. Go ahead, relax your arms for now, I don't want to stretch your shoulders. But what we're going to do is we're going to put our arms out, we're going to take a nice deep breath in, and then when we exhale, we're going to take, for me it's my middle finger, for most of you it'll be your middle finger. I'm going to try to think about getting my middle fingers as far away from my body as possible, as if I'm able to kind of like tickle both walls at the same time. All right, so here we go, nice deep breath in. Exhale and reach with the fingers, reach with the fingers, reach. A little further. You feel that anywhere? Good, go ahead, relax out of that. What we're going to do is I'm going to add a level of intensity to that. So I'll give you a side profile. So now I'm going to stretch this way like I did, but then as I'm reaching out, I'm going to also pull back and then pull back with my fingers this way. And it's going to add a lot of that stretch to the front side. All right, so go ahead, nice deep breath in. And reach with the fingers, breathe out, touch the walls, and then when you're ready, go ahead and pull it back a little bit, and then pull the fingers back a little bit. You feel that? Where do you feel that? I'm just curious. Bicep. You feel it in the bicep. Some of you might feel it closer to the elbow. Some of you might feel it closer to the shoulder. Some of you might feel it down here. So fingers back, you start feeling it down here, but otherwise it's there, yeah. So you'll get really good at doing it slightly different ways to stretch in slightly different places, right? Let's try it this way. So now fingers are going to be out, but now we're going to turn our palms around. We're going to do the same thing. So now when we stretch, we're going to kind of, basically, as I pull back, I'm also kind of going into a bit of a ski jump position. I'm doing as much pronation, supination as I can with my forearms. So breath in. And then go ahead and turn over, same thing. Nice breath. Pull back a little bit. For some, this isn't as awesome, but for some, it is. Last one now palms up as if we're holding glasses of water. We'll keep the water there. Nice breath in, and then exhale, straighten it out. Reach, 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 and then when you're ready, if you want, go ahead, pull down, pull fingers back. That one's great for the elbows, I think. Thank you. So for me, I don't know, I've never thought about having inflexible elbows because that's a joint, it's not a muscle, but I feel it right around here. But everyone's going to be a little different. And for me, because I hold a bass trombone most of the time, which is a left hand, basically you hold it with the left hand and you play with the right hand slide, my left side really takes a beating. For most of you, you're a little more symmetrical with what you have to do, with the loads that you impose upon the body, the way you use your muscles. How many of you are right-handed? Most of you, if not all of you. Is anyone lucky? Okay, all right. Just waiting. Call left. Who's left-handed? All right, left-handed represented. How many of you carry a bag over one side, one shoulder? Every now and then, like when you carry a bag, right? I have a 2-year-old toddler, and I primarily carry him in my left arm. For some reason, I don't know why. Probably because I'm right-handed, so I can still do stuff, like open the car or whatever. But even basic everyday movements, like carrying a bag, carrying your food, carrying your suitcase or your duffel from the bus or whatever, you tend to default more heavily on one side versus the other. That's going to affect the muscle use on that side. That's going to affect the bone density development on that side. If you put more loads on one side, those bones tend to build up and calcify, so they actually become a little bigger. My left shoulder blade's a little bigger than my right shoulder blade because I hold a bass trombone, and it imposes more weight. So over time, you're going to find that your body actually is quite asymmetrical. Now, because you're playing pit work, your movement is relatively symmetrical, so you might think that everything's going to be nice and balanced, but as you start doing the stretch and doing the massage work, you might find that one side's a little less flexible than the other, one side's a little more sore than the other, one side has a little bit less range of motion than the other. So when you are stretching, when you are spending time doing this, make sure that whatever side seems to be a little less awesome, spend more time on that side, all right? We tend to always think, all right, if I do this for 5 seconds, and then I do this for 5 seconds, and then I do this for 5 seconds, and I do this for 5 seconds, then we're stretching in a very balanced, symmetrical way, but our bodies are not. So we're not doing what our bodies really, really need. I'm talking high-level stuff, but just keep that in mind. The other thing I want to do is just get a little bit of the neck. A lot of times what happens, especially for people that use their arms a lot, and when your arm is out in front of you, we have a center of balance, a center of gravity, if you will, and if your arms are here, it changes the center of gravity. So 2 things happen. Number 1, the muscles on the back side of the body, that protagonist-antagonist pair, the muscles on the back side have to engage a little more. If I'm in this position for 8 hours, my shoulders and my back are going to engage more to keep me from falling over. If my body didn't do any change, this would be enough to make me topple forward. But it doesn't, right? Because we change how we use our bodies. So spend time with the tennis ball on the wall, right? Obviously, things like that. Also, the other thing we do is we ride a bus quite a bit, right? Several hours every night, yeah? So your glutes and your hamstrings sit on that floor of that seat, right? Same thing can happen with their brain. The brain can say, wait a second, the muscle's not changing length, but I feel that there's some engagement here, so it shuts down. And actually, a very common thing in the sports world is dead ass syndrome. I don't know if you've encountered that in your studies at this point. Yeah, so if the gluteus maximus, which is the strongest skeletal muscle in the human body and pretty much involved in almost every movement that we do that involves any kind of, if you move anything, your glutes are actually usually a little bit involved. If the glutes aren't doing the job that they need to be doing, then guess what muscles get called into action? Lower back, a little bit of hamstrings. Most of us have tight hamstrings because we sit a lot, like on the bus or in class or in cars or everywhere else when we eat. So make sure that you take time with the tennis ball and really get right up there into that glute area. If you can get your hands on a bocce ball, that's really great for the ground. You can actually sit on it like this. So you'll get creative. You'll figure it out. One last stretch. So with our neck, when we start doing more effort, we start getting tired, we start trying really hard, our shoulders tend to raise a little bit. Has anyone ever called you out on that when you're playing? Your shoulders are just kind of raising on you? Yeah. So we want to make sure that we add length to these muscles up here. So go ahead, we'll start with those neck rolls. Just bring the head down, just roll around a little bit, just to loosen up that part of the body. Just at your own pace. And again, this is nothing new. If you notice when you go to one side, if you go to one side and your mouth opens like this, it means that there are some muscles up here that are actually a little tight. You can actually feel it. So if you try to keep your mouth closed, you'll actually feel it up in the masseter area. But now what I want to do is, let's go ahead. We'll take our head to the left, just so we're all kind of feeling the same way. Take your head to the left. So head relaxed down all the way to the left, as if your ear is really close to your left shoulder. Does not have to be touching. But now what I want you to do is do some of those right shoulder rolls. Take the opposite side and roll up, back, down. And there's going to be a point where you're going to say, wow, that's a really good stretch for this part of my neck. Do you feel that? You try chicken wing in that one. Go right into the Whitney Houston. Or the Michelle Kwan, maybe. It looks like a figure skating move. Just imagine my foot is up here. It'd be a figure skating move. But you can feel how that affects the stretch up in this area, right? Go ahead, we'll do the other side. So we'll just take head over to the right side. And then when you feel like you've got a nice relaxed neck, go ahead and start taking that opposite shoulder and just rolling it around and exploring that space. I get all sorts of crunchies in this one. And really what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the distance between your right ear and your left shoulder as far away as possible. The best thing that you can do for your muscles is lengthen them. Because the only thing that happens to them when they are being used is what? Shortening. Because they pull, they do not push. So every time you use a muscle, you shorten it. So the best thing you can do is when you're stretching, think about lengthening everything, lengthening the muscles, lengthening the distance here. And do it as relaxed as possible. If you have to stress out all these muscles to make it happen, then you're making one thing better and one thing worse, right? So we want to stay as relaxed as possible. I'm not sure what time it is. Are we 55, 56? Okay, so we're close. So that's pretty much the info I had for you. Here you go. So this is your bag. So you'll notice, see these little ones? Those little tiny ones? I highly recommend that you all get a chance to try those out in your downtime. You've got some tennis balls, some racquetballs, you've got some dollar store balls, you've got, and the one other thing I threw in here was, I gave you a piece of rope. I'll just show you really quickly what I like to do with the rope. So, for me, when I would stretch, like if I wanted to touch my toes, I'm not very flexible. I'm not flexible now because as a trombone professor, I don't stretch enough. But for me to touch my toes, I would have to really put a lot of strain into like my back or my arms. It all tends to reach. So what I do is I just use a rope, lasso my feet, and then I can maintain a nice relaxed back while I stretch my hamstrings. So if I'm doing things like if I'm doing floor work, if I want to stretch my hands this way, I can relax my entire upper body and allow the rope to give me the length of my hamstrings. So for some of you, you may find that you have enough flexibility to do all sorts of things. That's great. And for some of you, if you are lacking in the flexibility department, something like a belt, or if you have a tie that goes around your sleeping bag, or this rope, because I'm throwing it in your bag, take advantage and use it in your downtime. And you'll find that that might help you in ways. Some of you won't need it, and that's great. But some of you might. So there it is. All right, so that's all I had for you. I want you to have a wonderful tour. Please stay healthy and do your best to maintain as high level of a body as you can so you can be as great and awesome as I know you all are capable of doing. So, thanks.